strides. Some lows, some highs. But what's undeniable is that it's been 2 years that have produced significant actions and outcomes for our dear country. I have a statement which I will share with you after this conference. And in the course of my presentation, I will try to refer to the statement as much as possible. At the All Progressives Congress, APC, when we say that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the president of progress and has set Nigeria on a road less traveled, we do not mean that this journey of intergenerational significance is without delays or bumps along the way. It does not mean that our travel plan and roadmap is set on an immutable course. It does not even mean that the vehicle in which we're traveling is set on cruise control. But it means that our vehicle is set on a certain and determined course of travel, on a road that puts distance between where we're coming from and where we're going as a country and as a people. It is a road filled with renewed hope of infinite possibilities. A road that leads to our long-desired destination, a place of more peace, more safety and security, and a place of improved and enduring prosperity. But more importantly, we make bold to say that our vehicle of state, under the able, capable, safe, and steady hands of our executive driver, leader, president, and commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, is on the move, unstoppably, irreversibly, milestone after milestone, on a steady course on the road to our long-desired destination of peace, security, and enduring prosperity. Our leader, Mr. President, is not the first president of our dear country, but he is the first to break with what had become a stagnating culture of presidential inertia. Kick the can down the road for the next president style of leadership and governance. Crippling and vexing national challenges across all sectors of our national life have come under his laser-focused scrutiny, clear prescription, and curative treatment. In the face of daunting generational challenges, this president demonstrated political will never before recorded in our contemporary political history. And like a confident surgeon, he has enacted and continues to enact policy reforms skillfully designed to give our country not just a chance of urgent resuscitation, but a real shot at rejuvenating wellness. Make no mistake, our great party and our leader are fully conscious of the inevitable and transient elevated difficulties that these flagship policy reforms have imposed on our dear compatriots. In all, the best interests and well-being of this and future generations remain at the core of his thinking and priority placement. It is against this backdrop that we commend President Tinubu for his bold and purposeful leadership on the occasion of the midterm anniversary of the administration. Undaunted by the hydra-headed challenges that bedeviled our nation, President Tinubu initiated far-reaching reforms, ending fuel subsidy and harmonizing multiple foreign exchange rate regimes, meant to tackle deep structural distortions in the economy that had worsened over decades of token gestures by previous administrations. Despite the transient elevated costs of living impacts of the policies, experts and critics agree that the reforms were inevitable and crucial to stabilizing and positioning the economy for steady and sustainable growth. At midterm, the pall of gloom over our nation has lifted, replaced by a dawn of rebounding optimism and progress. Signs and indications have never been clearer in our recent history of a resurgent economy, heralding strong prospects of a vibrant and prosperous future for our country. The fuel subsidy and foreign exchange reforms were followed by other important interventions, including clearing the burdensome backlog of foreign exchange and Central Bank of Nigeria's ways and means debts, crashing the debt servicing ratio from about 98% to approximately 68%, overhauling the tax system, allocating more resources to subnational governments, and granting financial autonomy to local government authorities in the country, and other novel initiatives weaved together to strengthen the fundamentals of our economy. The administration's relentless war against oil theft has helped to boost oil production, now standing upwards of 1.8 million barrels per day, and surpassing the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC's quota for the first time in recent history. Massive reforms and investments in oil and gas sectors totaling over $8 billion improved ease of doing business in the country, revitalized stock exchange market for enhanced profitability, and more foreign direct investments in excess of $50 billion, all signal the emergent and resurgent economy of our country. Not surprisingly, the nation has posted trade surpluses for consecutive quarters since 2023. The historic gross domestic product GDP growth of 3.38% in quarter 4 of 2024 has been lauded both by the International Monetary Fund and other international monetary authorities, the African Development Bank, as incontrovertible index of a rebounding economy. In its determination to enhance peace and security across the country. The administration has left no stone unturned in its renewed fight against terrorism and banditry. Thankfully, the massive support for military welfare and funding of the armed forces have resulted in neutralizing of over 13,500 terrorists and arrests of nearly 18,000, with many internally displaced persons camps being shut down and displaced persons returning to their homes, and farmers increasingly accessing their farmlands with attendant crash in price of food and basic staple in the country. Nigeria is indisputably safer today than it was in the years prior to 2023. President Tinubu'S timely upward review of workers' pay and approval of 70,000 minimum wage and COPS members 77,000 Naira increase allowance. The introduction of the NEL Fund, the Nigerian Education Loan Fund, other than the 900,000 beneficiary of Presidential Loan and Grant Scheme, all attests to the unwavering commitment to citizen welfare. Infrastructurally, the administration's accomplishments remain awe-inspiring. Aside fast-tracking of the 1.5 trillion road concession projects under the Highway Development and Management Initiative, the administration is executing legacy projects such as the 750-kilometer Lagos-Calabar coastal highway, the 1,058-kilometer Sokoto-Badagry superhighway, the 486-kilometer Calabar-Abuja superhighway, the 421-kilometer Akwanga-Jos Bauchi-Gombe highway, the 375-kilometer Abuja-Kaduna-Zaria-Kano highway, the 107-kilometer Enugu-Onitsha expressway, the Kano-Kaduna standard gauge rail line, and numerous other audacious projects over this period under review. In the 2 years of this president, we have seen over 270 road projects completed. 270 road projects completed. In the critical health sector, the administration has equally left indelible footprints, approving over 21 strategic policies with direct bearing on the health of Nigerians, disbursing over 80 billion Naira to revitalize over 8,000 primary healthcare centers. 8,000 primary healthcare centers across the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, recruiting over 2,500 health workers and retraining over 60,000, introducing zero tariff, excise duties, and VAT on imported pharmaceutical products, reducing maternal mortality through neonatal maternal reduction initiative, including free cesarean sections, and many more. Besides the massive upgrade of infrastructure at the airports nationwide, the administration has secured the delisting of Nigeria from the Cape Town Convention aircraft leasing risk lists, effectively allowing domestic airlines to access aircraft financing options through dry lease agreements. What is more, Nigeria's global compliance rating was adjusted from 49.5% to 70.5% under the watch of Mr. President. To enhance security, the President administration has distributed, to enhance food security, the administration has distributed fertilizers and other farm inputs to farmers nationwide, released 42,000 metric tons of grains across 36 states and FCT, established the Livestock Ministry, currently working on recapitalizing the Bank of Industry and other initiatives aimed at making the agricultural sector more attractive and more productive. Empirically, a lot more have been accomplished in the creative solid minerals, power and energy, oil and gas sectors, and all of this. Yet, the administration remains focused and determined to serve Nigerians better in the concluding period of its 4-year term. Now, we applaud all Nigerians for their invaluable support and crave more support for this president in the outstanding 2 years of his tenure to enable Mr. President and his administration unpack the fullness of the renewed hope agenda for the overall good of all Nigerians. That ends my formal remarks. But I'll say a few more words. I was once a student. So were you. I assume that all of us here were students at one point or the other. And anyone who didn't have parents who could just pull out a check and write a check for their kids to get especially higher education had to struggle. In my case, my older brother took over the responsibility of paying for my university studies at the University of Jos, because my parents, with the other kids on their hands, had to struggle. Now, today, looking back, I don't want to say I am envious of students today, because back then, how I wish that I had the opportunity to simply complete a set of forms and have my tuition and even some allowance provided to me to go to school. Because I think there's no one in this country who disagrees that education is at the core of any prospect for Nigeria's uprising, to rise to that level that we all want to see. Education makes for better citizenship. Education conduces to the utmost delivery of that human potential that can help to accelerate growth and progress across all sectors. Realizing this president was right on the mark when he announced and now implementing that NEL Fund initiative that is providing help to our indigent students to be able to study. And I think we overlook this quite a lot. But I think that for the first time in a long time, our students have been able to study in school, stay in school and study, without the perennial disruptions that result from strike actions by one entity or the other. They have been able to stay more in school than they have spent at home over the last 2 years. That too is indisputable. We're happy for it. I'm sure our students are happy for it. There's a whole lot to say. In 2 years, I am a lawyer, I'm not an economist, but even as a lawyer who is, mostly ignorant about economic things, or at least analysis, I am aware, keenly aware, that for a very long time, our country was hemorrhaging from a balance of payment deficit, where we were importing everything more than we were exporting. For the first time in the 2 years of this president, we're seeing a radical shift in our balance of payments sheet, with our country today exporting more than we're importing. I know that the question that is on the minds of many of our people is that what does this all mean? Some would say that we're not seeing a dramatic change in the conditions on our dining tables. That is also a fair comment. But it's only a fair comment in the context of time. A fair comment today, but actually may not be even a comment tomorrow. Because all of the indications that we have referenced, and there's so many more we can't even reference because of time, are pointing clearly to a near future where we begin to see very remarkable, significant, and sustainable difference in our dining rooms. There's no country of the world, none whatsoever, from the east to the west, that have made this transition from the doldrums to a place where today they have won the respect and admiration of other countries of the world, where the economy looks better than it was decades ago, where the citizens didn't have to endure this kind of momentary, transient, adverse impacts like we are enduring today. Which is why at the APC, we are full of gratitude to our people. Full of gratitude to our people, even those that don't understand the complexities of economics, but have been willing to simply endure in the hope that truly, tomorrow will bring better days. And as the president said in his statement marking his anniversary today, the worst is behind us. The future has never been more promising. And I think that's really the message that we at the APC would like Nigerians to take away from today's events, which is that we understand the pain that many of our people have had to endure. We understand it. But it's pain that we're enduring today, so tomorrow can be better. So tomorrow can be better, like it's gone better for many countries of the world who are willing to persevere, to stand fast, even against momentary challenges. One thing I think no one, even those in the opposition, do not dispute without losing face, is that this president not only has a track record, but is committed to promoting the very best interests of this and future generation. They can say they don't agree. They can say that politically speaking, but I know that they know better. But in the heart of hearts, they don't buy that. Just like many Nigerians don't buy that. So on this note, I'd like to thank you for listening. And again, I celebrate with Nigerians and hope that tomorrow indeed will bring better things for our dear nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
I said, other presidents who came before this president preferred to simply postpone the doomsday. Because we didn't just wake up in the last 2 years to realize that fuel subsidy was a destructive device in our country. We did it. We've always known that. And as a matter of fact, there's no president who has come in the last 15, 20 years who didn't, in fact, remove fuel subsidy. Because when you think back, fuel was not, it was not at the point that President Tinubu met it, back in 1999. It wasn't. Fuel was, the digit was far, far lower. It was cheaper to buy fuel in 1999 in terms of the, local economy than it was at the time that Buhari came in this country. So it means that other presidents were in fact taking out subsidy, gradually. But let me tell you the difference between this president and the rest of them. Other presidents who intervened in the fuel subsidy regime did so to save a bit of money and to free up, some money to get their job done. They didn't do it because they were interested in solving structural problems that beset our economy. They didn't do that. They simply needed to, because when you have between your debt servicing commitments and the fuel subsidy, and you were spending over 95-98% of all revenues in the country, as president, you see money coming in, but you can't touch it because it's already pre-committed to existing obligations. What does that mean? It means you had to govern with nothing, which is why we saw a lot of borrowing. Because, our governments were borrowing to pay salaries of workers. It wasn't coming from our revenue because our revenue was already completely mortgaged to these serious national economic commitments. The debt servicing and the subsidy regime. Now, how can anyone, any country, survive on that model? It was completely unsustainable. But see, the difference between President Bola Tinubu, and the rest of them was that this president, once he was inaugurated, he took that oath and said, you know what, enough. He knew, and we know, that doing what this president has done would likely make him unpopular in the beginning, which we are all witnesses to. However, that calculation and the relevance, the significance of that to the electoral prospects of 2027 did not stop him, because he decided to put the strategic best interest of our country over and above his own electoral calculation. So when the opposition simply bandy stories around, things are hard, rice has gone up and all that, that's why the president's on top, because he knew that was going to come. And he was willing to stake highly so our country can have that shot at not just recovery, but some serious foundational repair that can then support rapid growth and prosperity down the road. So this is a sacrificial president who is willing to stake even his own political interests for Nigeria. And I think that in the fullness of his term, even 2 years from now, many Nigerians, if not most Nigerians, will agree that this man indeed, as I have said and I'm saying again, is truly Nigeria's president of progress. When we will see some transmission of benefit to our people over fuel subsidy removal and the foreign exchange situation. The benefits are here already. They're coming. They're coming. Now, everyone agrees. Just yesterday, I believe, the Financial Times editorial was right on the mark, saying that under this president, that a lot of people have even Nigerians, and he says a lot of investors, a lot of people around the country, and even Nigerians are missing what is significant, what they need to pay attention to keep their eyes on the ball, which is that under this president, Nigeria has turned the corner. That is not a piece written by a presidential spokesman. This is a serious international, financial organization in its editorial policy has decided that even though many people are distracted by all the hue and cry from certain quarters, but that Nigeria is marching forward and building the blocks of prosperity, saying that in well over a decade, that Nigeria has never done this good. And because when your macroeconomic conditions are unfavorable, are in a pit, you cannot have any kind of sustainable microeconomic impacts. You want to buy bread or buy rice for 2,000 naira. That is wonderful. But you can't do that when one production is not ramping up. You can't do that when the country is on its knees, paying debt and dealing with things they shouldn't bother with. But this government is gradually freeing up that flexibility for Nigeria and creating incentives for people to go to the land and till the land. Now, we are mostly journalists here. And I don't often say this, but I can say this today on a day like this. And I say it on a very light note. Now, I don't know how many of us in this room or how many people we know who are preparing their children, apart from our children who study agriculture in school, many of whom don't end up practicing agriculture. How many Nigerians are really preparing their children to till the land, whether on a subsistence level or on a mechanized level? How many Nigerians? You see, we ought to really pay attention and support our country. The incentive that this administration is creating, opportunities that are creating, we must take advantage of it. And I think that's really the message that should, interest us on a day like this. Thank you very much.
You see, when you give a microphone to a lawyer, a pastor, or a professor, you will take your time. So please,
I'm a journalist today, not a lawyer.
Please, let's just ask one question, and the MPS will call it as brief as possible. So the next question is Romanus, after Romanus, Shehu, Jude, Alaji, and the two Alajis.
Yes, let me stand up because of my heart. So I see very well. When I came in, sir, I saw a live program going on television. And that's not my the question I want to ask.
Who is campaigning? Nobody's campaigning. Endorsement is not campaigning. A vote of confidence is something that is routine in any organization. People wake up in the morning, and even when they decide to, pass a vote of confidence on somebody or on an institution. That is not campaigning. I don't think that's correct in the way you framed it. And in any event, if you are worried that APC is campaigning, which we're not, are you also not worried that the opposition is campaigning by all of the activities that is going on their side, building coalitions every day, finding words, creating false narratives about the government and trying to also discredit the government and make themselves look good? Are you also worried about that? Because if you're worried about the APC endorsing an individual, the president, you should also be worried that the opposition is campaigning. But neither the opposition nor the APC are campaigning. I don't speak for them, but I want to imagine as a Democrat that people are free to engage. And engaging is part of the democratic process. I think we are confusing or conflating INEC's timelines for certain actions with the freedom and democratic liberty of people, citizens, politicians to express themselves. Those expressions may come, politically, may come even in partisan, notes, but that does not mean anyone is campaigning. When the campaign starts, I don't think you'll be wondering. You will know for sure that, we're campaigning, but we're not doing that for now. Insecurity. Look, sadly, insecurity is a challenge that we face as a country, especially over the last 15, 20 years. But it is also a challenge that is a global phenomenon. I think we should be fair in how we frame this conversation about insecurity. Because when we speak, insecurity, is on the rise, it's, we're seeing an upsurge in insecurity in certain parts of the country. That may be true, but it is also true that the government and its security forces are not sleeping. It's those who are determined to do evil, we do evil irrespective. You can't stop them because they don't mean well. Part of what drives them is to create that havoc and kill people, maim people, disturb the peace. That is what appeals to their very darkest minds. And we cannot celebrate them as a people. Because, as the National Security Advisor presented at our party's national summit the other day, about 13,543 terrorists have been neutralized in the last 2 years. Think about it. 13,000 human beings neutralized. Who are these people who are willing to be killed because they're looking to kill innocent people? What drives them? We must get into their own psychology to understand where they're coming from. And we can't simply frame this issue as simply a failure of government to eliminate insecurity. Russia invaded Ukraine, telling his people, this will be a quick operation to, neutralize Ukraine. And listen, Russia is a superpower, the last I checked. Ukraine is not a superpower, even though it was a component part of Russia back then in the Soviet system. But how many years now? 2 years? 2 years on, they are still, throwing bombs up and down. Who would have thought that Ukraine would stand? You see, things about insecurity, and especially in our country where we're not fighting a conventional warfare, the asymmetric nature of this engagement makes it even harder because you're fighting people who are in the shadows. They are not amassed somewhere where you are shooting down aircraft and, say, okay, this is a perimeter that if you fire a bomb over the next, 1,000 meters, you hit them. They are in the shadow. They are completely embedded within a civilian population. So how you separate the citizens from the terrorists or the bandits, it's not easy at all. So I think Nigerians must get a perspective about this and see that our troops are doing a heck of a job. I can tell you that. They've rescued over nearly 10,000 hostages. More than 17,000, nearly 18,000 bandits arrested already in custody. When you add all that together, Nigeria should be asking, where are these people coming from? As they're killing them and arresting and detaining them, how come they continue to, populate? Where are they coming from? And we need to begin to look at those trends and address those fundamentals. So, look, the point, in a summary, answer your question, is that the government is doing, a lot. This president has supported the military more than any other president. Even the soldiers say that. So I think that we must continue to support our troops and hope that we get a handle to, again, if not eliminate, but to, completely decapitate these, crooks and criminals and terrorists to the point where, our people can return to their normal lives, go to the farms and live without, having to flee from their homes. And I think that's the abiding commitment of this president.
Sure.
Before I answer your question, we're journalists, I'm not expecting any answers, but I'll just ask it rhetorically. In a country like China, does anyone remember the date that China turned from being really a struggling for the generality of the population, an endemically poor country, to today that China became a superpower? What was the timeline? What date on the calendar was it that China became a superpower? We all blinked, opened our eyes, and voila, China became a superpower. Economically speaking, and militarily, by every other indicator. What date on the calendar did Singapore become a prosperous nation? What date did Malaysia become? You see, these are not things that are liable to calendar calculations. So if you are thinking in those terms, then there's already a problem. Because it doesn't work like that. As I said, macroeconomics and microeconomics are inseparable. They are related. If your macroeconomics is faulty, flawed, if the distortions in your microeconomic system is deep and fundamental, I can assure you that you will only retrogress. People will never feel comfortable in their homes. They can't. So what you call theory at a macroeconomic level is in fact indispensable necessity. You must have progress on that plane for you to have progress on this plane. That's economics. President Tinubu is not the one saying it. I'm not the one saying it. I'm not even an economist. But I understand it. And I agree. You can't. If every month your salary is 400,000 naira, and for some reason, either because your parents borrowed money or somebody borrowed money, you are committed to the tune of 380,000, and all you have as disposable income, or usable income is 20,000 naira. There's a strong limitation as to how you can provide for this child that you love with your life. You can't be the father you would like to be, no matter what you do. You can't be. So it's the same for the country. So the better, if tomorrow your salary of 400,000, you're able to keep 200,000, you will do more for your children. That is the way it goes. It goes the same way for the individual as it goes for the country. Now, the other predicate of your question is about, the Buhari years. Look, today is, like I said, it's a day to really take in the progress we're making. It's not a day to get political or to reflect, that far back. Because you cannot talk about Buhari without talking about the circumstances that Buhari himself stepped into and had to manage. Me, I'm the one saying this, and I'm not saying this on behalf of the party. In my personal understanding, Buhari was a stopgap president. He came in to simply hold still a country that was already flipping off the cliff, flipping off the precipice. The country was, look, all of the fallacies of the PDP is that the economy did better under their watch. It didn't. The economy we ran was a phantom economy. An economy where contracts were awarded, security votes were given. We saw what happened when Buhari took over with Dasuki's, NSA, where billions of dollars meant to fight the war on terror were simply shared to everybody today who are parading and opening their mouth to speak in the PDP. It was simply a portion to them. What happened to all the money voted for the whole power sector reform? Again, shared out. Lagos-Ibadan Expressway was awarded multiple times, but never done. Second Niger Bridge, awarded multiple times, never. Where do you think all that money went? The money went into building estates and paying architects to design estates of 500 for private individuals. Money that was meant to procure and produce common good were diverted. Of course, the architect who designed those estates in Lekki and everywhere else, they made money. So if you talk to them, they tell you the economy was better under Jonathan than it was today. Because there was phantom money, free money. But Nigeria was stripped of the benefits, the essential benefits of development in those years. Buhari simply came to plug the hemorrhage. Like, an emergency treatment. You rush a patient in, the nurses are not interested in long-term issues. They want to just stop that bleeding, let the blood clot, let that man get the oxygen, let him do that. That was Buhari's mission. So I think it would be drastically unfair to evaluate Buhari administration against any sort of objective, standard. Because every president will govern based on what he met on the ground. Because, by the way, every president takes the right hand and takes an oath. They don't take an oath to serve in association with their predecessor, whether of their party or of a different party. They take an oath to serve to the best of their ability as president, not in relation to anyone else. So this idea that you must evaluate Tinubu, in the context of the spectrum of, Buhari's years. If you want to do that, then take Buhari and evaluate him in the context of, PDP 16 years. Then you can arrive at a fair assessment. But we're not doing that. And that's why you don't see that in the president's statements, or you don't see that in mine. Because actually, politically speaking, it's unnecessary. Because doing that, we mean, again, focus, and then somebody will tell you, why are you discussing the PDP? Why are you not talking about APC? So today is a conversation about the 2-year term of this president. And as I said, we at the APC are very pleased with the outcome so far. And we are confident that the next 2 years will produce fuller evidence of why, again, I've described Mr. President as the president of progress.
The MPS is available. Yes. For those people, or you need to take it. Thank you very much for coming. God bless you.